Hey, we have a quorum. I'd like to bring the Planning Commission meeting to order and ask Commissioner Sampson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item of business, approval of the minutes. Would anyone care to make a motion for
Okay. I move that we approve the January 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes as presented.
motion and a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, and there was one minor change that I understand has been corrected. You were listed as a staff member, Mr. Sampson, rather than absent. So the all in favor of approving the minutes? Dawn, are you in favor? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Mudd, are you online yet? Okay. Commissioner Sampson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryant Ward?
Yes.
And I also say yes. Minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the first item, I understand Stacy Lagana is online, who will probably be speaking for the applicant. First item, under matters of discussion and review, Mallards Pond Preliminary Plat revised. We'll go to Director Harrington for the staff report.
All right, good evening, Planning Commission. Again, for the record, Janine Harrington, Director of Planning for the Town of La Plata. So this is the second time that you have seen Mallards Pond, but this time it has been revised a little bit. So when we first brought this forward to the Planning Commission, there was a roadway that was proposed to kind of made a square around the center part of this development. So just to give a little bit of background, this property was annexed in 2017. It became effective on February 3rd of 2018. It was zoned rural residential under the county, and we received the R3 designation under the town zoning code. And then they proceeded in 2021 for the 24-lot townhome subdivision. So just to kind of briefly go through my staff report from the last time. Again, it's 24 townhome lots. There is two means of ingress and egress from Lodge Street and from Chesapeake Street, and they're providing buffer yards along the western and southern property lines. That was part of their annexation approval as well. They are in compliance with Chapter 108 resource protection standards. None of those, the forest conservation and any of the environmental protections have not been changed as part of this revision. They are in compliance with stormwater management at this point. Part of the reason why they had to amend the plan was because of the stormwater management. We found out that Lee Street, which is where some of the stormwater runoff was going to, is actually owned by the county. And that it was actually, was it Scroggins? Did I mess that up? It was Scroggins. Scroggins, thank you. Is owned by the county and not the town. So they went back and we reviewed the overall development and decided that it would be best to remove impervious surface. So as you can see on the revised plans, a portion of what was previously or what is Bufflehead Place has been removed. And that is now going to be open space, green space area. And they will also utilize that to accommodate their stormwater management as well. So it opens up and protects more green space, which we are always looking to do within the town, while still providing those two means of ingress and egress to Chesapeake Street and through Bufflehead Place down to Scroggins Street. So that is the main change that's shown on here. That did slightly change the street trees, obviously because we removed a portion of a right-of-way. So the previously there were 66 street trees proposed, and now they have 55 street trees. So that's the only other major change that was shown on the revised plans. So as we get down into the residential zoning regulations, again, the only thing that changed was the open space. It was 1.055 acres of open space proposed, and now that has increased to 2.076 acres of green space, open space. And with that, staff is still recommending approval of the major subdivision preliminary plat in accordance with the town code and with the 2020 comprehensive plan. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. And as you mentioned, Stacy Lagana is on the call.
Okay, so is there any comment from the applicant?
No, we are okay with the staff report and everything as shown and presented.
Okay, any questioners from the commissioners? Not hearing any, I look for a motion to approve the revised preliminary plat.
Chairman Gahan, I move that we approve the major subdivision preliminary plat in accordance with the code of the town of La Plata and with the 2020 comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Chairman Gahan, I second that motion.
Thank you. We have a second to a properly made motion. I'll start with you, Dawn. Are you in favor? Yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Sampson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryant Ward?
Yes.
I also. So it passes unanimously. Thank you. Kelly, can you confirm if John Mudd is on yet?
He is not, Mr. Chair.
Yes, was that?
He
No.
is not.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I don't think this is going to change anything, but I have a definition question. There were a number of different kinds of trees identified, and many of them are identified as street trees.
Mhm.
Are they indigenous? I mean, how is a street tree different from, say, a red maple or an elm or?
So it's there, yeah, it's interchangeable. So the street tree is just how we define it within the town code, that we require trees along public right of ways spaced a certain amount. So the type of tree is, that's a little bit different. We do try to push for native trees, and we have as we move forward with some of our code revisions, we are going to start requiring native landscaping, and we'll allow for a certain percentage of native Rs or cultivars. But at this point, the two that they have there listed are native plants or native trees.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Next item is the same property. Now that we have approved the revised preliminary plat, we're now faced with the final plat. So Director Harrington, anything to add?
No, again, this is a formality because we had previously reviewed and approved the preliminary plat and final plat. Since we've approved the revised preliminary plat, we now need to approve the revised final plat so they can proceed forward with recordation. I will note that this is one of the projects that was already slated for water and sewer under the development capacity analysis that we recently did, and that we'll kind of talk about in a little bit. So that doesn't change anything on that end. It was already slated for water and sewer capacity. And other than that, we do recommend approval of the final plat in accordance with the preliminary plat and the town code.
Stacy Lagana, anything to add?
No, we're in agreement with everything as presented.
Okay, so I look for a motion regarding the approval of the final plat for Mallards Pond.
Chairman Gahan, I move that we approve Mallards Pond Final Plat in accordance with section 173-24 of the code of the town of La Plata.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Commissioner Banks, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Sampson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bryant Ward?
Yes.
I also say yes. Stacy, thank you for your time. Enjoy the band practice or whatever it is you're at.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, McDonald's, putting in looking for a parking waiver because of a drive-through. Director Harrington, staff report.
Right. Again, so for this project, it is a minor site plan and therefore technically doesn't go before the Planning Commission. However, they are requesting a parking waiver approval in order to install a double drive-through at the at the fast food restaurant. So they're proposing to demolish the existing drive-through and construct a double drive-through lane. As with many of the other fast food restaurants in the area, they have found that more and more people are utilizing the drive-through option rather than the dine-in options. So just to go over briefly, some of the areas that work with the parking requirements and in aiding in your decision for the parking waiver. Under Chapter 170 Streets and Sidewalks, the proposed development is in compliance with the streets and sidewalks regulations. Because it's an existing development in the town, there are already adequate sidewalks throughout the site, allowing for ADA access and pedestrian accessibility along 301. And with the parking requirements, I will note that in 2018, we did revise the parking requirements. So McDonald's, as they were even before the 2018 parking revision, did not have the 40 spaces as required by the town code. So they have 36 existing parking spaces. Under the 2018 revision, they would require 40 parking spaces, and they are providing 27 in accordance with their parking waiver request. So they did provide the parking waiver application with their explanation, showing that, again, as times move forward, more people are utilizing the drive-through, and they'd like to have expanded access for people to have stacking on the site so that it doesn't back up into 301. And so staff is recommending approval of the parking waiver request in accordance with the town of the code. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
That's exactly what I know about McDonald's, but Cherry Hill Road. Is that the name of the road?
Nope.
We didn't borrow this from somewhere else, and it's an exact image, huh? Is it?
Nope, that is incorrect. So that is
That is Crain Highway, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that would be Crain Highway. So that is the existing layout. And Kelly, if you scroll down, there should be another page that shows the proposed. But yes, the road is incorrect.
Yeah, we apologize for that. We're not realizing that was an issue with the survey that just kind of carried over through the drawings.
Okay, so that's a good segue to the applicant. Anything to add to Director Harrington's report?
No, she covered everything very thoroughly. We're really just trying to increase capacity of the drive-through at this site. And generally, McDonald's sweet spot for parking at their sites is between 25 and 35 spaces, which this would fall under. And so we're hopeful that you all would agree that this waiver seems justified at this property.
Okay, are there any questions or comments for either Director Harrington or the applicant?
Chairman Gahan.
Yes.
Just one question for Director Harrington. Prior to the code revision in 2018, were they in compliance with the parking spaces?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I don't remember what they were before we amended that.
I thought I saw somewhere that they were already not in compliance with 36.
As of today. So when like I said, I do not remember what the parking standard was prior to 2018. That's why I don't know exactly. I just know that when we updated our code in 2018 to require the 40 parking spaces, they were already non-conforming because they only had 36.
But the previous code, when they were built, they probably were in.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for either Director Harrington or the applicant?
I have a question. I just wanted to make sure I understand it correctly. So currently they have 36
Mhm.
parking spaces. And the rationale is since they will have the drive-through, less parking will be needed and it will go down to 27,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
And they also provided support that upon review of some thousands of McDonald's, 25 to 30 some was in the range.
Yeah, and this ties into our previous parking conversations where we really do need to evaluate our parking regulations. And we have an overabundance of parking in several areas, especially throughout the commercial highway area. So we really do need to review that. And that's part of our comprehensive plan, is to reduce parking overall and to make sure that we're providing green spaces. So
Okay.
ties in with that conversation.
Commissioner Banks, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't. Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments for Director Harrington or the applicant? Not hearing any, I ask for a motion to approve or not the parking waiver.
Chairman Gahan. I move that we approve the parking waiver request in accordance with the code of the town of La Plata.
Okay, properly moved. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Thank you. So again, I'll start with Commissioner Banks. Yay or nay?
Yay.
Commissioner Sampson? Yay. Commissioner Bryant Ward? I also say yes. That's unanimous. So
Now that we have that approved, we'll go into the minor site plan review with staff, and we've already noted our first comment.
okay, so those representing the applicant, thank you for your time. And we move on to matters of information, the Planning Department project update. Director Harrington.
All right, so for our development updates, attached to this agenda, you will see our latest and greatest development capacity analysis. This is going to be updated constantly. So it's not that I have one final version that I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that I can upload this to the town's website. As you know, we're working through our website update so we can hopefully make things a little bit more accessible. So I'm trying to figure out a way that I can post this online and make it visible for people without being able to edit the document. But it's going to be something that's updated as development proceeds and as we analyze our water and sewer capacity for the town. We are moving forward with our urban tree canopy study. We have gotten the final report draft back, and so we're hoping to have that ready to present early this spring. It's going to give us some recommendations on how we can increase our tree canopy, ways to maintain our tree canopy, different options, as well as provide us with some opportunities for grant funding and other opportunities to plant trees. We have I'll give a little snippet of our La Planta project.
May I ask a question there?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of discussion lately that in some states, the Bradford pear is going to be not ever allowed.
Yes.
And we've got a lot of them in town. Unfortunately, quite a few of them are on my own property, and I know why they're not allowed. Does this canopy study look at trees that should no longer be allowed?
Not necessarily. So what they did do is they did a tree inventory of all the street trees, and mainly categorized by street trees that they looked at. And so they went through and they looked at all the different species that we have and provided that kind of outline. That not necessarily on what trees should be banned. They do tell us what we have too much of. And where we should probably diversify. I think it says that there shouldn't be any more than 20% of any one type of tree. But it doesn't get into that. We do have a recommended planting list that was put together between myself and our Keep La Plata Beautiful committee. And that does show all of the native planting options that we prefer. And it does have a list of banned plants that we do not want in the town. So that's where we're going to kind of turn those decision-making and guidelines over to our Keep La Plata Beautiful committee and to proceed forward that way. But we do need to provide some code revisions, not only to our zoning code, but our subdivision chapter and others to kind of outline that and codify it. Because right now it's really just, can you please plant native? The only place that we have requirements for native plantings is under our forest conservation reforestation section. So we're hoping to carry that through to the rest of our code chapters as well. But they really just went into what do you have and what would you need to plant or what would you need to do to maintain a certain amount of canopy or to grow your canopy over the next 20 to 40 years.
Thanks for allowing that interruption.
Absolutely. We are still looking at the Southwest Quadrant Access Management Plan with Mead and Hunt. They're trying to meet with the individual property owners to kind of get a more detailed look at what would be feasible So we'll hopefully have some updates with that fairly soon. And we are still, the ongoing work is happening with Charles Street and the study for safe routes for all. We got a grant through the state to provide upgrades to Charles Street, so that's still ongoing. They're getting background data and looking at some different options on how to improve that right of way. So for our planning department priorities, kind of dealing with the planning commission side of things, we have our annual report, which will be due July 1st. So hopefully I get it to you at least by the June meeting. As I mentioned, our March planning commission meeting has been canceled. I will be out of the office. And hopefully we'll pick back up in April. We do have planning commission rules and procedures that are still under development. We're looking at the town council rules and procedures and working with the town attorney to create those to present before you. And I'm hoping that we can bring that to the April planning commission meeting. We're still moving forward with our municipal software for our development review and building permit management software. They're in phase 2, so they're building the software, and I'm hoping to have that kind of up and running and training happening in the next, 6 months, so we can get that out there for the public to utilize. And then, of course, we have many code revisions ongoing, including the adequate public facilities ordinance, subdivision ordinance, zoning ordinance, health and sanitation, streets and sidewalks. I have a whole list.
So you covered my last question. I didn't see anything about the adequate public facilities, but it's under
It's-
the town code revisions.
It's still in draft mode. We're trying to work out some of the smaller details. I had a brief conversation with Mead and Hunt today about the traffic portion. So at this point, it's like, let's just get things on paper. Let's get a draft, and then we can move forward from there. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. As I mentioned, the most recent development capacity report has been attached to the agenda, so you can see what projects are in the pipeline and how we're trying to monitor the water and sewer, and as well as projected school seats with this capacity analysis. I have shared this with the county, with the EMS, with the hospital. I've also shared it with the Charles County Sheriff's Office, as well as the town's police department and our consultants. So everyone has this, and I've made them aware that this is going to be updated. And as we update it, I will provide that with everyone. We did have individual meetings with emergency services and with the hospital in conjunction with the adequate public facilities discussion. And it's been made pretty clear that we have no control over their process or how they will expand or accommodate development. The hospital, for example, has a formula, and they have to go through the state, and they have a certain licensing requirement for the number of beds and how they can expand. They have a current expansion going on with their emergency department and a mental health wing, and the main portion of the hospital they have it on their radar for having to expand it and renovate it in the future. But they need to go through the state to get all of that funding and or approvals. And emergency services is similarly kind of through the county, and they have their own budgetary process. And when they have to go through the county commissioners in order to get funding and to do expansion. So I don't think we're necessarily going to have a separate section regarding emergency services, because I don't think we feasibly can. However, we are going to make sure that we have regular meetings and that we keep everyone updated and work through the process as we get development and to get their feedback. With emergency services, we're going to start sending them building permits, site plans for review, and any comments that they have, they can send those back so we can take those into consideration when we come for review and approval.
So Director Harrington, how did the conversations actually go when you met with the external partners with regards to the APFO?
It went very well. They were understanding and appreciative of the data. I think that's the most important thing that we can do is just provide the data to keep them updated on what we have in for review, how many units we're looking at, especially with residential when it comes to, hospital services and those types of things. So just making sure that we keep them updated and to work with them as much as we can.
Well, it's encouraging to hear that, but this frightens me. I
It's
mean, we have all of these preliminary plats that are already approved, that if we took it to the next step, we would run out of water.
Mhm. So
I'm reading that correctly.
So this is the, basically the top, it's just divided into categories as where the development, currently is at. So there's certain, you'll notice that I added an approval expiration date column. That's a very important column to pay attention to. So just because they have, site plan approval or subdivision approval, the only ones at this point that are vested, is what I'll say vested, are any final plats that have their plat recorded and or any development with a major site plan that's received a UNO. Those are vested and they're taken into consideration. Otherwise, we have these expiration dates and it's really a first come, first serve as we go through. So as we get a project in for a building permit or for if they want to come back and renew their preliminary plat, it's all taken into consideration as to what we have outstanding as it is. So with the developments that have approved major site plan and an approved final plat, we still have 198,460 gallons per day available. And so then from there, it would depend on which preliminary plat came forward to get reapproval. And we just have to analyze it on a case-by-case basis.
So when you were having these discussions with other entities, were people like Stagecoach and Agricopia involved in those discussions? Were they just as appreciative of you sharing this data?
Probably not.
Okay.
I think, well, and it's really, I think that in the realm of things, the town never thought we'd get to this point. For the longest time, we always had plenty of capacity in both water and sewer. And again, sewer, we have control over, and we are actively working on upgrading our wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
So we're going to have, that capacity sooner rather than later. And we're seeing that we probably need to make sure that we go up to 2.5 million gallons per day for that. And then the water, we have ongoing discussions with a water sharing agreement with the county. So if that water sharing agreement goes through, then this kind of angst will go away because
Okay.
we will have.
Allow me to clarify my earlier comment about my fright. I understand and appreciate that we do have control over the sewer side of it. And we've got a good plan to get to more than we need, based on this bottom line. It's just that I guess I don't have that same level of comfort that we're going to get there on the water side.
Right.
And you agree with me?
It's definitely a negotiation. It's something that it's not in my wheelhouse. I'm not dealing with those conversations. But it is a negotiation with the county and with the state to try to come to that agreement. I think that they've gotten everything figured out as to the logistics, how it would work. I think what they're kind of talking about is the rates and how that would be applied.
Okay.
So I have faith that they are working together and that they're trying to find a resolution. But it's just noted that if we don't have that available for water and sewer, I'm not going to be bringing stuff forward for approval.
Right.
Until we have that.
And you just took words out of my mouth. I mean, if that doesn't happen, this commission goes out of business.
Hopefully temporarily, but
Right.
it's something that we have to pay very close attention to because you definitely don't want to pull more water appropriation than you have permitted through the state.
Well, I commend you and your team. Obviously, a lot of effort went into this, and it's, being an engineer, this is very logical. It's it was easy for me to figure out what's going on and figure out where the problems were. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
Chairman Gahan, I have a question.
I just have a quick question, if I may. And it's really more hypothetical than anything else. So if we get the water and the worked out with the county or with the state, I'm assuming the cost will be passed on to the consumer at some point. The same with the sewer. If all of that will be passed on to the consumer. So how do we start to engage and have those conversations with consumers?
So that the actual construction of the wastewater treatment plant and any water lines that would be a part of a water sharing agreement are covered by our major facility fees that we collect with development. Those are impact fees, and that ties back into the APFO conversation we had before, looking at the traffic side and did we want to do an impact fee for that. So any kind of construction or upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant, as well as any connecting water lines, would be covered by that major facility fee fund that we have. The actual water prices would be tied in with our utility billing. And I think that that's what they're looking at right now, is what would the rates be for that?
And I guess one way to look at that is we have more homes
Mhm.
to be able to share a
Correct.
greater load, so hopefully the impact would not be significant
Right.
per consumer.
Right.
Yeah.
So previously we talked about, Director Straw and I went through a development and we saw how the trees were tilting the sidewalks and breaking up the concrete. We talked about expanding that area. Would that be a part of the town code revision?
Yes, it will. That is
Thank you.
chapter 170, streets and sidewalks.
Thank you.
So we are looking at, that's something that was brought even back in 2018 when we were doing our zoning code revisions. Within the town code, there's a minimum planting width under the streets and sidewalks chapter, and that's really not sufficient to handle a decent sized street tree. So we're going to be looking at following the complete streets model ordinance that we've looked at a few times, and making sure that when we have planting sidewalks and the actual planting strips that the trees go in, that there's going to be sufficient room for the type and size of tree that is being proposed.
Any other questions or comments for Director Harrington? Maybe I jumped the gun. Have you completed your report?
I have.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Director Harrington? Not hearing any. Then we move to Councilwoman Bryant Ward. Anything for the council?
Well, the only thing really is we've been ready to go into the budgeting process and we're excited about that. Starting February 20th, we'll have our first budgeting retreat. So
What's the target date for the budget to get approved?
we don't have a date for it to be final yet, but we do have a series of working up to it, up to completing it.
I think it's generally approved within the May to June timeframe because it needs to become effective of July 1st.
And I noted you were excited about this.
I am looking forward to seeing what it's gonna look like.
That's good. That's good. Anything else regarding the council? Any questions of Councilwoman Bryant Ward? Not hearing any. Is there anything else to be brought up? My last page. I don't think I'm missing anything. There it is. Anything else to be brought up for the good of the commission? Not hearing any. It looks like it's 6:35. I adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very much. And again.
Have a good evening.
This concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you for joining us.